Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recap. So, November 2023, how was it? It sucked. Can't get more blunt than that. It sucked. It was terrible. Look, going into November, my expectations were muted because on paper, I didn't expect any of these movies to do amazing. I already knew November was more or less crippled thanks to losing Dune Part 2, which was supposed to come out the 3rd of November. Supposed to kick off the month with a bang. Well, because of the strikes, particularly the actors' strike, that couldn't happen. That movie got pushed all the way to March of next year. And no big studio was able to fill in that gap. And the month definitely suffered because of that. So our new November was not going to be great, but damn, it somehow managed to be worse than I expected. With one of the movies doing so bad, it shocked me to my core, but also made me laugh hysterically at the same time. And I'm pretty sure you know which one that is. So let's begin, shall we? Let's just analyze this corpse. Well, because why not? So as usual, I'm going to be comparing my own personal predictions to what actually happened because I find it to be fun. And let's officially begin. So November the 3rd, a weekend to forget, a weekend to sleep in, and the weekend to watch Invincible Season 2, which is what I did, or at least the first half of Season 2. But yeah, November 3rd, we had 3 movies. None of them even remotely big players. But let's go through them first. So Marsh King's daughter, the Marsh's King's daughter. My prediction with this was like 1 to 3 million for the opening weekend. Its final total 4 to 6 million. It didn't even hit a million. It hit 849,000. So oof. And it's now made 1 million, almost 1.8 million. Yeah, it's out of theaters. It was really in 3 theaters. 3 theaters only last weekend, so it's done. I'm not surprised. This movie had no marketing. It was very much just thrown out there. It's like, what did you expect? Like, of course it wasn't going to do well. You can't just throw movies out there with no marketing and expect them to pop off. That's not how it works. So, yeah, I'm not surprised that did terrible. Now, Priscilla is a little more interesting. So, my prediction for this was, I believe it was 3 to 5 million for the 3-day weekend, and its final total be like 10 to 15 million. This actually did a little better than that. Granted, not by a huge amount, but it hit 20 million, which is more than I expected. It had legs for a time. It only fell like 9% week 2. Granted, it had like 1,000 theaters, but still, like, it did well-ish, considering it's low profile. So, yeah, I guess this is kind of a very minor success story. I mean, sure, it's a mere fraction of what the Elvis movie made last year. Grant, that was from a bigger studio, bigger marketing budget, bigger everything. This is from like a different perspective from Elvis's wife. It was a much smaller flick in comparison, but I guess for what it is, it could have been a lot worse. It could have done a lot worse. So, hooray! I guess you didn't. Hooray, Priscilla! You didn't completely embarrass yourself. You managed to act. Oh yeah, it hit just above 5 million. So it just ever so slightly exceeded my expectations in terms of opening weekend and total. So good job, I guess. And then last but not least, or really last and least, what happens later? I predicted the same thing with Marsh King's daughter. 1 to 3 million opening weekend, 4 to 6 million total. Well, it got closer to that in comparison to Marsh King's daughter, but not by much. It opened with 1.5 million, so it hit that. It hit opening weekend, that range, but for its total, it fell off, and it only hit like 3.2 million. It's pretty much it's out of theaters completely. Again, I'm not surprised by these results. This movie had like no marketing push at all. It was basically just thrown out there just to be there. And surprise, surprise, nobody watched it. So, yeah, nothing really to say about that. And yeah, that was November 3rd, a complete waste of time. Now we move on to November 10th. This is where the big movie comes in. The real I guess the show stealer of November for all the wrong reasons. But we're not going to talk about that just yet. We got a couple movies to talk about before that one. So first off, The Holdovers. I predicted an opening weekend of I think it was like 2 to 4 million and a final total of like 10, less than 10 million. I don't remember. It hit 15.6, so I mean that's good. It exceeded my low expectations. It opened with 3 million, then it fell 16%, then went up 4% for Thanksgiving weekend, then it fell 57%, which is pretty typical for post Thanksgiving. So his legs are fine. They are solid enough. I don't think it's going to hit that 20. I don't know if it will hit that 20 million that Priscilla did. I don't think so. I think it lost a little too much steam. But we'll see. But I don't see it happening. But it exceeded my low expectations. But still, for these awards movies, man, like what happened? These movies used to make like way more money. Like we're talking 20, like 30, 40, 50 million. Now they can't even get past 20. Like what happened? Like I don't know. I guess people just stopped caring about these type of movies. Or they're just like, I don't need to see this on the big screen. I'll just wait till it hits, blank screen, screaming, blank streaming service. Maybe that's it. I don't know. But the holdovers, it didn't do great, but it did better than I expected. So, hooray, I guess. What's next? It's a Wonderful Knife. This weird movie. So I predicted an opening weekend of God. I think it was 500K to a million. It hit 598K. So I was right there. But I predicted less than 2 million total. It hit 800,000. So technically I was accurate. But this movie, boy, talk about having no life. It I mean, look at these numbers. It's insane. It had It's number 11 on Friday. Then it fell 51% Friday to Saturday, which is just beyond anemic. And its second weekend, it lost most of its theaters, but it dropped 96%. 96%. It literally evaporated in record time. Even more than the movie I'm going to be talking about a little later. So, yeah, that's insane. And it's out of theaters now. So, I mean, I'm not surprised. Apparently, word of mouth was really not good. I mean, I talked about that when I made my prediction video for it. So I'm not surprised by these results. And plus, the fact there's no marketing. It was thrown out there. And yeah, it just crashed and burned. So, yeah, nothing else to say about that. Then we got Journey to Bethlehem. This thing. I predicted an opening week of I think it was like 2 to 3 to 5, 2 to 4. I don't remember, and a final total of like 6 to 10 million. I think. Well, it hit 2.4 million, and it hit 6 million total. 6.2 million. It's pretty much dead now. Um, I'm not, with faith-based movies, they're extremely unpredictable. But for this one, I'm just like, I don't even think the target demographic gives a shit, and they didn't. Apparently, this movie's supposed to be like a retelling of the Mary and Joseph like birth of Jesus story, but it has like pop songs. Yeah, because that's what the Christian audience likes. A pop version of the birth of Jesus. Obviously. Like, who is the demographic? What were they trying to do? That's my question. What were they trying to accomplish? I don't know, but the Christian audience, the faith-based audience, they steered far away from this, and no, and as a result, it died. So yeah, yeah, I'm not super surprised by this failure right here. But the Marvels, that's a failure that I could not have predicted. Like hell, like a year ago. Oh. I don't know where to begin with the Marvels. There's so much to unpack. There's so much to discuss because damn, this movie, it may actually be the biggest bomb of 2023. It may be a bigger bomb than The Flash, than Indiana Jones and Dial of Destiny, than Haunted Mansion. This is this is rock bottom for 2023 when it comes to financial losses. This is rock bottom. um So the Marvels, what the hell happened? Well, my prediction. Okay, so going into November, I was thinking it would probably open. Actually, like mid October, I was thinking it would open like between like maybe in the 70s, like the same range as in Eternals or in Ant-Man and the Wasp. The second movie. I thought it would open within that range, which still would have been good, but as we got closer to release, I've noticed the numbers started to drop. It went from the 70s to the 60s to the 50s. And I was like, oh God, what is going on? And then reviews came out, and I'm just like, yep, this is going to be a disaster. But the question is, how big of a disaster? And so, because of all that, my opening weekend, I dropped it down significantly to like 45 to 55 million, and its final total 100 to 120. Turns out those numbers were a little too high because the Marvels opened with 46 million. 46 million. I mean, to put that in perspective, that 46 million um opening weekend, that is, yes, that is worse than what Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania made opening day. So Ant-Man 3, the disaster that was Ant-Man 3, made more money on day one than the Marvels made opening weekend. Let that sink in for a second. And even more damning, I gotta find it. Captain Marvel, the first movie. Comparing it to that is just laughable. It really is. That movie opened with 61 million opening day, which is way bigger than the second movie's opening weekend. And hell, only Sunday, Captain Marvel's first Sunday was worse than the Marvel's opening weekend. Like that's how bad this is. That the Marvels, this big Marvel movie, can't even match like the opening days of some other MCU movies. And the thing is, it costs just as much, so that just makes it look even worse. In comparison, and with all the MCU movies, like opening weekend, this broke the record. It had the worst opening. It finally broke the 15-year record of The Incredible Hulk, a movie that's barely canon to the MCU. It did worse than that. That is impressive. Impressive in the worst way imaginable. But wait, it gets worse. Much worse. So after a terrible opening weekend, well, actually, it's Thursday preview. I knew shit was gonna hit the fan because that 6.6 million for an MCU movie, that's awful, straight awful. And then everything just got worse after that. I fell 29%. It was very, very front loaded opening weekend, although that was maybe partially fueled by Veterans Day, just a little bit. But second weekend, man, oh, look at that second Friday. It fell 87%. I was stunned, legitimately shocked that it fell that hard. Friday, the second Friday. I never seen a drop. I don't think I've ever seen a drop that big for like a big budget movie like this. I mean, sure, there's Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah, I know that dropped like a stone, but that movie was obviously that movie was low budget. You know, the standards for that were a lot lower than an MCU flick. Like this is a big budget MCU flick, and it fell like 87% Friday to Friday. Second week, it fell 78%. That is actually the worst drop ever for a superhero movie. It did it. You broke the record again. Another record no one wanted to break. The Marvels did it. It fell 78%. Worse than Morbius, worse than The Flash, worse than Dark Phoenix, worse than all of them. Worse than Ant-Man Quantum Mania. It did worse than all of them. It's absolutely insane. And like at that point, nothing mattered. Nothing really mattered. And now it has hit 81 million total, which is worse than a decent chunk of MCU movies like their opening weekends. Actually, let's play a fun game. Let's count how many MCU movies like their opening weekends are better than the Marvel's final total. Okay, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So out of the, what is it, 33 MCU movies, its total is worse than about over 2/3 of the MCU library. Like, goddamn. And worldwide, it's an absolute disaster. It made like 100 as like Disney actually just gave up with they just completely gave up on it with its box office. They stopped reporting international numbers. So it's not going to get much higher than 200 million. It's going to hit that, which is less than its budget. So yeah, that I don't need to go much further than that. So what happened? Well, why did this happen? Many reasons. The MCU as a brand, it is going the wrong direction. It is falling off. Like the evidence couldn't be more clear than now. Because the MCU was a juggernaut. Every movie was a smash hit. Everyone was loving it. They were like the biggest events of the year. But after Endgame, things took a very bad turn. And like ever since 2021 when the MCU came back after its 2020 hiatus thanks to COVID, everything's been going, well, not everything, but it's been mostly going wrong. Black Widow didn't do well, although that was hampered by Disney Plus Premier Access. Shang-Chi really, well, at the time for when it came out, it did fine, but in the grand scheme of things, it didn't do that well. Eternals was a flop. No Way Home did spectacular, beyond spectacular. Doctor Strange 2 and Thor Love and Thunder, they made money, but not a lot of people like those movies. And Eternals, people straight up hate that movie. I'm one of those people. Black Panther Wakanda Forever did fine, even though it didn't make anywhere near as much as the first Black Panther. Ant-Man 3, flop. Undisputed flop when it comes to reception and money. Guardians 3 did well. Critics, audiences, box office, that did well. That's Marvel's only win for this year. Then they got the Marvels, which is their worst performer ever by a large margin. And don't even get me started on the Disney Plus shows. That's a whole can of worms. I mean, you had Secret Invasion, which came out like before the Marvels, which was a total disaster. And then Miss Marvel, which is, this character right here on the left corner here, like her show, no one watched it. So, and then you got like Monica Rambeau, who's on the right here, on the right side. She was from WandaVision, and the thing is, with these MCU shows, a small fraction of like the people who watch, of all the people who watch MCU movies, a very small fraction of those people watch those shows. So when like those shows, when the effects of those lead to the movies, people are just like, "What the hell is this? What's going on? Who are you?" Like people are gonna get very confused. And yeah, like having that synergy, it sounded really good on paper, but execution, it is really just made a mess out of everything. For a casual fan, keeping up with the MCU has to be an absolute nightmare. Hell, it's a nightmare for me, and I've been with the MCU for like well over a decade. So, yeah. The end. Fun fact: this is the first Marvel movie that I've seen that I went to the theater to see. This is the first one I skipped. Yeah, I didn't watch this. I chose not to. I was just like, you know what? Nah, I don't think so. And majority of the population had the same thought, the same opinion. Just like, nah, I'm gonna skip this because, well, I already mentioned first with the MCU brand falling off. There's also the fact that the marketing for this was really poor. Like, there wasn't a single part of this movie that felt must see. Nothing about it made me go, damn, I need to see that. Like, it just, a lot of it just kind of felt generic, and there's just like a generic, like, action scenes, and just another MCU space movie, and just, it just never looked very good to me. I'm just like, what are we doing? Then another problem is the fact that Captain Marvel made $1 billion. But the thing is, no one really loves that movie. Like that movie, it was the type of movie where people were like, yes, give me more. That didn't really happen. I mean, like people thought about that with Iron Man and Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, stuff like that. People wanted more of that. People wanted more, see more of these characters. No one was really saying that about the first Captain Marvel. Like it kind of came out. A lot of people thought it was kind of mid, including me, and then that was it. Like there was no like demand for a sequel, no like big fan following for this. Like it just never materialized. And it was some say the only reason why the Captain Marvel did as well as it did is because of how it was released. It was sandwiched in between Infinity War and Endgame strategically, and it worked. But the Marvels didn't have that advantage. It wasn't it wasn't sandwiched between anything, like anything of like massive importance. So yeah, so the first Captain Marvel's, just ho hum reputation. Um, yeah, that is obviously a problem, and yeah, so that was like a third main issue. And what else? I guess there's just the superheroes in general at the box office. This year has not been good for the genre. There's only two hits I can name: Guardians 3 and Across the Spider Verse. That's all you got. Everything else, bomb. Everything else. And Aquaman 2, that may just join the bomb pack, but we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, and ugh, it's just ugh, God. Yeah, I knew this movie was gonna be bad. I knew it was gonna do bad, but I had no idea it would be this bad. No clue. So with the MCU, I mean, this has to be a massive wake up call. Oh, I didn't even mention the Variety article that came out right before this movie released. That was a damning article. That did some serious damage to the whole MCU brand because it really showed just how fucked the whole thing is for like several different projects. Like with dealing with Kang and Jonathan Majors and all his legal issues, to like what happened with Blade, how that went through like so many writers. At one point, Blade was going to be like the fourth lead in his own movie. Like, what the hell is that? And then Ant-Man 3's production, how the people apparently when it premiered, had its big Hollywood premiere, people were like stunned by how awful the CGI looked, how unfinished it looked. And keep in mind, that was like days before it was released to the public. And with this, like the fact that the director apparently like left, like while production was like the post production wasn't even finished, she just left to do another movie. Apparently, although the director did deny that, but and yeah, and just it's a hot mess. I don't know how the MCU can recover from this. I know next year, because of strike issues and production issues, we're only going to get one MCU flick, and that's Deadpool 3. That should be a winner. That should be a hit. I am 100% convinced that should be a hit. Uh, but after that, I don't know. I feel like the MCU needs a change, a badly needed change. It needs to stop what's doing. It needs to stop being so damn safe. It needs to stop just being very that the formula needs an upgrade desperately, because at this rate, I don't know if I see him surviving till like 2030. I don't see it. If we have any more bombs on the level of the Marvels, we're definitely not going to see that. And I know we're never going to see Captain Marvel as a main player ever again, judging by these numbers. So, yeah, the Marvels disaster, the big bomb of 2023. Ugh. So yeah, I spent a lot of time talking about that because that's all anyone was talking about during the month of November. So yeah, that killed the month right there. The Marvels doing as bad as it did. If it made 200 million domestic, it wouldn't have been good, but at least it would have helped out the month just a little bit. But no, it couldn't even reach 100 million. I guess I can mention Tiger 3. Tiger 3 did well for itself, considering its low profile. So, is that. But now we move on to November 17th. Things get a little better. Emphasis on the word little better. Not really a massive improvement, but still better than the Marvels. So first, Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I predicted an opening weekend of, I believe, 45 to 50 million and a final total of like 120 to 150. And it hit 44.6 million. I was like, uh-oh, that's no good. but it's currently reached 125 million as of December 6th. It had a really good Thanksgiving weekend, only fell 35%, which is quite good for the holiday, for like a big movie like this. And it only fell 51% last weekend, which is good for post-Thanksgiving. So it's already reached within the realm of my final total prediction. So I mean that's good. But with this, like, obviously the chances of this reaching the other chances of this being as big as the other Hunger Games movies was non-existent, because the Hunger Games movies, when they came out, that was a completely different era. That was when the young adult movies were like the hot craze. That's when they were everywhere and all the tween girls out there were watching them. Like, they were making some money. Like Harry Potter, Twilight, then Hunger Games was the biggest of them all domestically. Like, Hunger Games and Catching Fire both made over 400 million domestic, which is nuts. And even though Mockingjay Part 1, Part 2 fell off quite a bit from those highs in terms of box office, they still made quite a bit of money. But after that, the young adult genre just died in theaters. Like, the whole genre, like, it really felt like a fad. Like, it came and went. And yeah, it's so releasing this in 2023, like, that seemed like a big risk. And yeah, compared to the other Hunger Games movies, it looks awful. Just downright pitiful. I mean, let me show you. Like 125 million domestically. That is barely higher than Mockingjay Part 1's opening weekend. So, yeah. Um so yeah, it doesn't look very good, but it wasn't super expensive. They were somewhat reasonable with that budget, only 100 million. So it's made over 250 million. It's going to take a couple more million before I imagine it'll be labeled as a hit. So compared to the other Hunger Games movies, it looks bad. By itself, by its own merits, it's fine. It could have been much worse. So yeah, and it's the big hit of the month. Technically, it made the most money out of all the November movies. So that's definitely a positive. You definitely brag about that a little bit. So yeah, and I didn't watch this movie. I thought about it. I was like, maybe, but then ultimately I was just like, nah, I don't think so. But even without me watching it, it's done. It's all right. All right is the best way I could describe it. It did all right. It didn't do awful. It didn't do great. It did okay at best. So yeah, that was Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Next up, Next Goal Wins. I knew this was going to tank for a while because the marketing campaign was very soft. It just, there was nothing. It felt like it was just getting dumped. And reviews came out. They were very much not good. I was like, yep, this is going to be a flop. So my opening weekend was 2 to 3 million prediction for that, 2 to 3 million, and final total like I think it was between 5 and 10, and it hit 2.5 million. So I was correct there, and total, it's reached over just a little over 6 million. It's out of it's dead. Well, it was already dead day one, but it's dead now. It's pretty much lost. It's gonna lose all of its theaters. So I'm not surprised. I mean, Taika Waititi, I mean, he made those Thor movies, which were big hits. Well, Thor Ragnarok was a massive hit, and then Jojo Rabbit did quite well for itself. But then Thor Love and Thunder, oh man, sure, that technically made money, but man, people hate that movie. And even when I watched it, I thought it was kind of mid, but as time has gone on, my opinions become more negative, more like, Taika, what were you thinking, man? And then the way he acted during the press junkets and everything, like the press tour for it, was terrible. He came off like a total asshole, and it kind of ruined his reputation. It more or less ruined his reputation, and I definitely believe that played a role in this, but also the fact that I guess no one cared. No one gave a shit. It was audience apathy at its finest. Like no one saw this as an event, and no one watched it as a result. So yeah, but with Taika Waititi, I know he's working on a Star Wars movie. I don't think that's gonna go well, but we'll see how that develops. But yeah, Next Goal Wins, flop. A flop I saw coming a mile away. So what's next? Thanksgiving. Okay, finally something more positive. So Thanksgiving, a movie that was originally a fake trailer from 2007's Grindhouse. It finally became a movie in 2023. It's one of the weirdest roads to the big screen I've ever seen. But anyway, it's opening weekend. Well, my opening weekend prediction was like 10 million. My final total was like 20 to 25 million. I've had a feeling it would be very front loaded because the movie's called Thanksgiving, right? So releasing before Thanksgiving makes sense. It's perfect. But once Thanksgiving is over, it becomes irrelevant immediately. And so I thought it would like tank completely after Thanksgiving, kind of like how the Halloween movies completely fell off once Halloween was over, or how like Christmas movies fall off after Christmas is over, or Valentine's themed movies or romance themed movies fall off hard after Valentine's Day. I thought the same thing would happen here with Thanksgiving. It would fall after Thanksgiving. But not really. It, well, not as much as I thought, at least. It opened with 10.3 million, had a solid second weekend of 31% drop. And third week, it did fall 63%, but I thought it would be a lot worse. And it's now made 29 million, 37 million worldwide on a budget of like 15 million, which is solid, not great, but a solid amount. Like, it's not like this movie needed to make like 100 million to be a success. So this number is decent. It is more than decent, which is why it was announced that this movie was going to get a sequel for 2025. So clearly Sony was satisfied with its performance. And this was the only movie in November I actually watched. Yeah, I watched this movie because I was so interested in it. And I thought it was good. I had a good time with it. It gave me what I wanted. It was a slasher flick and it gave me some cool kills. And the movie, like, it was so much better than Five Nights at Freddy's. Let me tell you, it. This movie got to the point. It didn't waste so much time on bullshit that nobody wanted to see, like a plot points and arcs nobody wanted to see. Five Nights at Freddy's bored the shit out of me. This I thought was hella entertaining. I would highly recommend you watch this. And I'm not sure if this is gonna be a Thanksgiving like tradition. like the movie you watch around Thanksgiving is kind of a weird choice. I don't think you want to watch this with the family, like at all. But I mean, I still would recommend it. I think it's a pretty good flick, so I would recommend. So yeah, it did exceed my expectations, and it's getting a sequel. Can't call that a failure. Can't call that an L. So the movie did all right for itself. And then next up, Trolls Band Together. So opening weekend, I predicted 25 to 30, I think, and its final total like 80 to 90, somewhere around that range. And it hit 30 million opening weekend, which I'm like, okay, that's not bad. It fell 41% for Thanksgiving, which is a little steeper than one would expect. And it fell 56%, which is pretty standard for post Thanksgiving. And it's now reached 76 million. So it will hit that 80 to 90 million range. So, I mean, sure, this movie, it's nowhere near as successful as the first Trolls movie, which right here, back in 2016, had a much bigger opening weekend, much bigger final total, worldwide total. But I mean, I imagine theaters were more or less satisfied with the run for Band Together after they were screwed in 2020, where Trolls World Tour, because of COVID, they put that on PVOD, and then it caused a big hoopla, caused just AMC to get really pissed off, be like, "Oh, Universal, we're not gonna play any of your movies anymore." A whole big mess there. So after all of that, I imagine those theaters were like, "Okay, good, you gave us a Trolls movie." So yeah, but I wouldn't call this movie a real hit. It cost 95 million. It's not gonna make a whole lot more than this, so it's definitely not a hit. But it's not like a huge disaster, like say Ruby Gillman. So it avoided that fate. But I don't expect them to make any more Trolls movies. Maybe some shows, I guess, but not a Trolls 4. I don't see that coming into existence. So yeah, but I guess for what it is, it could have been a lot worse. And it still did better than the other animated movie that came out in November, which we will talk about very soon. So yeah, so November 17th it happened. It wasn't a complete catastrophe. So then now we move on to November 22nd, Thanksgiving weekend. We got three movies that came out. So first of all, Napoleon. Okay. So for this, I did a 3 day and 5 day prediction. So I believe 3 day was like 25 to 30 million, and 5 day was like 35 million. Its final total was like 60 something million. Well, this movie, it started out really well. Those Tuesday previews gave me this false impression that this movie was really gonna overperform. It didn't. It only opened with like 20 million, 20.6 for the 3 day weekend, and 32 million, 32.7 million for the 5 day weekend. And as of December 6th, it has made 48 million. It fell off real hard second weekend, post Thanksgiving weekend, which I thought was well, not super surprising because word of mouth for this wasn't very good. It was very divided. It got like a B minus, which is pretty much death for any movie that's not a horror movie. And um yeah, I could this could crawl to 60 million, but yeah, it's not having legs. I'm not seeing any legs for this. And now here's the thing. Like this movie cost 200 million. So at first glance, these all these numbers, it looks like a catastrophic failure. Well, because this is an Apple movie, they don't see it the same way. Like their benchmark for success for their movies is much different than like traditional studios. See, with Apple, they release these movies in theaters to prop up their streaming service. Because by releasing them in theaters, it's basically PR, big old PR campaigns, where you release it in theaters, you get a lot of press, the movie makes some type of cash, and if with Sony who's distributing this, all they gotta do is pay for marketing cost, and then later on down the line, this will go to Apple TV Plus, and then once it's there, it'll be like a big premiere for them, and it'll hopefully like cause a boost in subscribers and everything. So, and not to mention like awards and whatnot. Like that's the main play. It's not about if these movies will make double or triple their budget. It's about boosting their streaming service. Because Apple, like they're Apple. I don't think a failure like this would affect them at all. So yeah, so technically I can't call by normal standards this is a disaster, but by Apple standards they don't care. So I can't call it a failure because of that, even though I want to. Even though like it looks like a failure, but to Apple it's not. Same applies to Killers of the Flower Moon. So yeah. So what's next? Saltburn. Okay. So Saltburn, I predicted like 2 million for 3 day, 3 million for 5 day. I don't remember exactly. And its final total would be like less than 10. Well, it did worse than that. It opened 1.8 million for the 3 day, and for the 5 day, uh, I guess 3.2 million. So I guess it kind of hit that, but not really. Yeah, it did. So I was thinking, okay, this movie's gonna fall off, but something miraculous happened. It only fell 9% second weekend, and it didn't even have an expansion or anything like Priscilla. Had the same number of theaters. Fell 9%. That's rare. That is really, really good. So I'm like, okay, this movie might actually have a chance to reach 10 million. It should be able to do that. But the thing is, this movie's going to be on Amazon Prime Video by Christmas. So that might hurt its box office. Because streaming and theatrical, they don't go well together. So, um, yeah, but it might reach 10 million. If it does, then I guess it'll be fine because this isn't exactly a super mainstream type of flick. You know, it could be worse. So yeah, so Saltburn, you didn't completely embarrass yourself. But speaking of a movie that embarrassed itself, Wish, the last movie we're going to be talking about. Oh, oh, so opening weekend, I predicted, I think it was like 25 to 30 million, and it's for the 3 day. 5 day was like 35 million. I don't, forgetting the the actual range. My final prediction was $80 million, which like if which already is terrible because this movie cost 200 million, even though it doesn't look like it cost 200 million. Because this movie had like a weird art style change that was no doubt inspired by Spider Verse. And but the thing is, with a lot of these movies that are inspired by Spider Verse, with their art styles, movies like Mitchell's versus the Machines, Bad Guys, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Mutant Mayhem, those movies looked so much better than this. Like Wish, look, no disrespect to the animators, they did the best they could, but man, this movie looked cheap. It looked cheap as hell. It looked just honestly kind of terrible. It just did not look appealing at all, and it perplexes me how a movie like this that costs 200 million looks so much worse than movies that cost less than half as much. Like that makes no sense. Like surely bigger budget means better visuals, right? But apparently not. So I don't know where the hell that money went. But yeah, that money was definitely not on the screen when it came to Wish. But anywho, so about 80 million final prediction. I don't I'm not confident this is gonna hit that anymore because its opening weekend was awful. Like it like got Wednesday, right? 8 million. Then it fell 53% the next day for Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh god. I already knew it was over. And then it opened with 19.6 million for the 3 day, 31.6 for the 5 day, which is so much lower than other main Disney movies that come out Thanksgiving. So much worse than Tangled, Frozen, Moana, Hell Encanto, Coco from Pixar. Hell, even The Good Dinosaur from Pixar, a movie that was a huge flop. That did way better than this. And then second weekend, it fell 61%. I'm just, well, so much for those good legs. Although that was post Thanksgiving is pretty rough for a lot of movies. But I don't see this bouncing back in a significant way. I think by the end of the month, it's gonna be gone. All those families, like all those not really all the families are gonna be. They rather watch Wonka and Migration, and they're gonna. Well, they already dropped Wish, but yeah. So once Wonka and Migration come out in theaters, it's truly game over. So yeah, it's only made 43 million as of December 6th. So what happened? Marketing terrible. It just like the Marvels, it never looked like a must-see film. It never looked like an event. It just they didn't even try. They didn't even try making people care. And so yeah, there's definitely a marketing issue. Another issue is the fact that Disney in general has had probably their worst year ever, potentially. Because and what's more hilarious is that this is supposed to be their 100th anniversary, right? Their big centennial. And the idea of Wish was was supposed to be like a celebration of that 100 years. But what it really feels like is that Wish feels hella corporate. It feels like it wasn't made out of passion. It was made out of obligation. It was made to be an advertisement for Disney. Judging by the post-credit scene that I've heard about, that's just the worst. The absolute worst. Pretty sure you all heard about it too. I won't mention it, but if you heard about it, you know how bad it is. Um, yeah. So the fact that this is supposed to be like a celebration of Disney, their 100th years, and yeah, it's been the worst 100th year. I don't know if a company has ever had a worse 100th anniversary ever, because I mean, like, look at their lineup: Ant-Man 3, see, The Little Mermaid, Little Mermaid, because Guardians of the Galaxy, that did well. That's their only hit of the year. Elemental barely survived. That should have been an absolute failure, and it was for a bit, but it managed to crawl out of that hole and not be a total failure. The same can't be said for Haunted Mansion, for the Marvels, and now Wish. So, oh, and I didn't mention Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. I keep forgetting that movie happened. I keep forgetting it came out, which is probably for the best. I forget that movie ever existed. I didn't even watch it, so I know I know I made a smart call there. But yeah, this year's been an absolute horror show for the Mouse House, and this was supposed to celebrate 100 years, and boy, it didn't. so so the fact that the movie felt very, a lot of people described it as like made by committee, like that's what it was described as. So the fact that it felt like that was going to be a problem. And another problem is that it feels like family audiences, it feels like they're steering clear of Disney, like they're avoiding Disney, because there have been plenty of other family movies that have come out the last few years that have done way better than Disney movies. I mean, like in 2021, you had Sing 2, which just crushed Encanto. And then 2022, you had Minions Rise of Gru. You had, shoot, what else? Oh yeah, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which started out real slow, but managed to find an audience and become a hit. And then not to mention The Bad Guys, which also did quite well for itself. Not as well as the other two movies, but still did all right. And then this year, the Mario movie made a stupid amount of money. Across Spider-Verse did extremely well. Hell, Mutant Mayhem did all right for itself. But with Disney movies, it's been different. Like Encanto didn't do great. Well, it's a bit of a flop theatrically. Lightyear was a bomb. Strange World was an even bigger bomb than that. And Elemental barely survived. And it's just, and now Wish is a huge flop. So it feels like a family audience is legitimately boycotting Disney, because that's what it feels like. Or maybe family audiences realizes that Disney movies, they're not trying very hard. They feel so just bland and boring. Like it doesn't feel like the magic is gone. The magic is just no more. So I guess until Disney gets their act together, I don't really see much future for their animation division. And like the anime movies, that's their bread and butter, like for generations. So the fact that it's doing so terrible is really something. But yeah, Wish, total catastrophe that I saw coming. So Disney had not one but two mega bombs this month. So that's just, what a way to end their 100th anniversary with a complete with complete failure. One would say they absolutely deserve it. But yeah, yeah. And that's it. That's it for November. So yeah, November, not a very good month. So now we're in December. December's already been interesting. Godzilla Minus One and Renaissance both did very well for themselves last weekend, considering they're like unusual movies for like the marketplace. But then after that, I don't know. Wonka, I'm not sure how well that will do. Same go Migration, it's from Illumination, so I'm not gonna bet against that. But Aquaman 2, I'm struggling to see it becoming a hit. And then the rest of these movies, I have no clue how they're gonna do. They're all wild cards to me. Hell, the whole month is a wild card. And without like a big movie like a No Way Home or of Water, it's gonna be interesting. I'll tell you that. It's real interesting. So yeah, so that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. Well, check out more videos like this. Got playlists on the homepage, all previous recap videos I made on the channel. Want to watch any of those videos from beginning to, well, I guess any of the videos I've done this year or the past few years, watch any of those, go right ahead. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. I've done every movie I've mentioned in detail here. So I've done prediction videos for all of those. So if you want to watch any of those prediction videos, any of the ones I've done this year, the past few years, want to watch any of them, go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I go over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't. I just made one, like, was it Tuesday or Wednesday? I struggling. I think it was Wednesday technically. About funny enough, Disney movies. Soul, Luca, Turning Red, movies that were screwed over and put on Disney Plus. Now getting theatrical releases in a few months. Talked about that and the Thanksgiving sequel and Nosferatu. So that was episode 220. Yeah, 220. So you want to watch that episode or any of the ones I've done on the channel, want to binge them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that, so go do it. And I might as well mention the December recap. That won't be happening till the beginning of probably the first week. Actually, second-ish week. Between the 5th and the 12th. Yeah, between the 5th and the 12th. That's when I'll make that video. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.